Welcome back to the Commuters. Today we have Basil, Sky, and Will back from the dead even.
Hello. I am
Whoa,
back.
wait, are you a zombie?
Yes.
Oh, shit.
See, if we had watched a different Edgar Wright movie, like Shaun of the Dead, then that would have been a perfect start. But I don't know how to connect the start to Scott
I
Pilgrim.
mean,
What
say
was
that,
the movie
but
again that you recommended, Sky, that I just named?
Scott Pilgrim versus the World, directed by Edgar Wright, featuring Michael Cera, maybe? I don't know. It could be
It might be Jesse
Eisenberg.
Eisenberg. Who can tell?
I thought it was versus the universe.
No, it's versus the universe. That's a sequel. Yeah, I recommended Scott Pilgrim versus the World. Do you want me to say why I recommended it?
Yes, please.
So, for one, I was not as super... Back when this movie came out, I didn't know Edgar Wright. I also didn't know movies very much. This was before I got a huge ton of attachment to movies, and I started digesting them differently. So at the time when I saw this, I absolutely liked it. Absolutely liked it. Just I didn't really have a huge opinion otherwise. I remember really enjoying it for its special effects, and I was like, oh yeah, it's funny too, haha. And that's it. At the time, I didn't dissect it, but this was an opportunity to look at it and dissect it in a completely different way. And I know Edgar Wright he's a director you really like, Basil.
Yes.
And I'm still not super familiar with him besides a few particular movies. Baby Driver, this the Shaun of the Dead. I was about to say Hot Fuzz, but I still got to watch Hot Fuzz. And I know I deserve to be yelled at for that.
Yes, you do. So, but I'm not going to yell at you. Yeah, I've seen every single one of Edgar Wright's movies, besides his very first one or two, maybe. But anything after Shaun of the Dead made by Edgar Wright, I've seen. So the Cornetto trilogy, Baby Driver, Scott Pilgrim. I'm extremely excited for his next movie, Last Night in Soho. I absolutely love his editing style and his directing style. It's extremely unique and very, very fresh. And it's really you don't see movies like his movies anywhere else. They're just they ooze the style of Edgar Wright. And I think nowhere is that more stylized and more true than in Scott Pilgrim. His other movies have I don't want to say restraint to them, but you can tell especially Baby Driver, because that's probably his most classy film, for lack of a better word. In Scott Pilgrim, it's just balls to the walls madness. And the way it's edited and the way it's shot and the use of special effects and how it all kind of comes together in this hyper realized.
You can tell it's his own.
Yeah, it's so Edgar Wright, and it's down to every aspect, from the actors and the performances they give, the dialogue and how it's given, the
which
editing
that's
especially.
That's kind of funny you say that, considering it's also an adaptation of something that exists already, which is kind of it's weird to say that this movie is balls to the wall Edgar Wright, yet it's also based on something that is very much actually it plays very, I won't say very close, but it's got a lot of really, really good attention to the source material as well.
Mm-hmm.
Which is important to note. This was based on a graphic novel by a dude named Brian Lee O'Malley. I'll be real, I didn't actually know the author's name, but I had read the graphic novel. And
yeah, I mean, it says it in the credits of the movie or whatever. It's
yeah. Well, I don't watch credits.
You don't even know how to read.
I don't. No, you're right. But yeah, based on the graphic novel, and adapting anything is hard because you've got to please the people who know the source material, but also you're adapting a movie. So it's you got to take creative liberties to that degree where it's necessary. And yet this whole movie doesn't feel like it does that, because if you told me that this was based directly on the graphic novel, I'd be like, yeah, okay, I can believe you completely, because it barely deviates. Besides, it's been a while. I'd have to reread it to know for sure. But regardless, let's talk about that plot. Let's talk about story. Explain what this movie even is before we start dissecting it.
Hey, Will, do you wanna tell us what the plot is?
The plot?
Yeah, the plot.
Well, first off, let's go into what plot really means.
Oh God, I know where you're going, man.
So the plot it's basically, a bass guitarist, from a garage, rock band who has trouble getting a girlfriend. Usually, I mean, sometimes probably having problems getting rid of them. But when this one girl, Ramona Flowers, right? Ramona
that's it.
Flowers, when she, I'm going to use this term, skates into his life,
Well said. Well said.
That's pretty good.
he finds that she has more problems than he does, because she has all these, like, an army of ex-boyfriends that will not stop until Scott's gone.
I believe it's a league or a guild. I'm not sure which. It doesn't matter. Yeah, there you go. That's it. I mean, it's a really weird premise.
Yeah,
Like-
because it does the thing with like the classic trope of, oh, he has to fight to get the girl, but it's like he kind of is already dating her, and then he has to fight to stay with her, and then at the end they break up and get back together. But it's,
So it's just like
kind of a
life.
twist on that type of premise.
Yeah,
But,
it's life.
yeah.
Will's pretty accurate there.
Right. I do think from the outside looking in, I think it sounds a little less than it is, and I think it's like, because the plot doesn't sound way too crazy. It's like, oh, he just is like
No.
fight the exes. Like in your head, you probably think, oh, what? He's just like, they have a fist fight or a brawl. It's like, no,
That's what you think.
Yeah.
No.
Then you get to the first fight, and you suddenly realize, oh god, this is crazy. What? They have mystical powers involved? What's going on? Even like Scott's confused.
This isn't your average movie.
What I like is how the story is played very seriously to an extent, but it's also like this insane stuff happens. The most, like, it's like magical sci-fi whatever, and it's like they just kind of accept it. Like there's no questioning what it is, which actually leads to one of my favorite jokes in the movie later on. But there's a lot of like cool visual cues too. Like if you notice throughout the movie, the shirts Scott's wearing, and then also like the shirts the boyfriends and the exes, I should say, are wearing, there's numbers on them, usually denoting which ex they are, or like he'll be like walking down the street, and after he already fought two of them, and there'll be 5 exes in the background. Like there's a lot of cool visual things to kind of hint you at where the story's going, and that's something that Edgar Wright does in a lot of his movies, like using the frame to like its most maximum potential to kind of help inform the story. I think it's funny because there's a certain disconnect for me, because like Scott throughout the movie is like considered sort of a nice guy, but he's also not a good guy, because he's like kind of a coward, and that's kind of the whole point. They even make a joke that he's like here in the power of self-respect, but it's like because he can't break up with Knives when he should have, or he shouldn't have really been dating her to begin with. He's a believable character in that he has flaws, and I think his arc works in the end, because like the movie isn't about him getting the girl, and that's kind of the joke, is because like he earns the power of love at the end, but that's not what he wins with. He wins with the power of self-respect, because that's what he needed, because he was a very Michael Cera type individual.
He really is. But technically, he didn't even win with the power of self-respect. He won with self-respect and by, coming to terms and helping accept that he made mistakes.
Yes.
Because he ultimately has to, if it wasn't for Knives at the end of the movie, he probably would have lost still.
Yeah.
Which is a really, really important thing to note, is that I really like the idea that the narrative pulls itself back in a full circle, where it's like, Knives was both a problem for him because he didn't realize how out of touch he was as a result of trying to get over his past breakup, which, by the way, there's a lot of like, I think it's super important to note that I don't want to say relationship trauma, but that's basically what it is a big theme of the movie for both characters. Like, you can tell Scott is an individual who was really messed up as a result of the breakup with Natalie / Envy. Mm-hmm. And it's a huge part of his arc, and he ends up like it hurts his relationship not only with Knives but with Ramona. And you also get like little pieces here and there that showcase that he doesn't know how to properly parse his relationships with people, because he doesn't seem to have the best relationship with Wallace, with his sister, with his bandmates, except well, I say that, but his Steven, I believe, is the name of his like, quote unquote talent.
Yeah.
The band leader, essentially. He's probably the only character that he has like a semi-decent relationship with throughout the whole movie.
Well, that's kind of the point of the movie, is he has to like fix all these relationships. Like and it's kind of down to every single character. He has to fix his relationship with Kim. He has to fix his relationship with Knives. He has to fix his relationship with young Neil, which one of my favorite moments. You will be now known as Neil. There's a lot of just fixing himself, fix his relationship with his sister, with Wallace, and all of that junk. There's kind of a payoff to all of these story threads. I honestly think the Wallace one is probably the least like broken relationship. The fixing of his relationship there is he just needs to move out. Like he can't.
I think
that's kind of
the
joke,
point. Though.
Is like Wallace is kind of taking care of him, and he needs to be like his own person.
I mean, Wallace himself is also just like kind of a living meme in the comics as well. He's kind of just like a huge meme.
He's great.
Oh, he's great. Honestly, every character to a degree is just so fantastic in their own little way. Like everybody has their quirks.
To be honest,
the way they're written is good.
I think the weakest character, in my opinion, is Ramona Flowers. I think like all the other characters pretty much around her, like Knives and all the other characters whose names I can't think of. Knives and most of the X's, and obviously Scott and Wallace, and they all kind of like have like very fun personalities. Where Ramona's very like she's extremely like hipstery, and it's like not necessarily the worst thing because the movie is very hipstery. That's kind of the point. Like,
I mean, it in itself is a joke used by Knives at one point because she even calls her a overweight hipster or something along those lines.
Yeah, for
no reason. It's played up as like a funny thing.
Well, also the main villain is like one of the most hipster douchebags who's ever lived. Like Jason Schwartzman is so great as what's his name, Gideon?
Yeah, Gideon Graves.
Yeah,
the G-Man.
What do you guys think about this cast though? Because really, it's kind of insane. Like everybody who's in this, you have freaking Chris Evans, Anna Kendrick, Aubrey Plaza, Brie Larson, obviously Michael Cera, and who else was it? Jason Schwartzman. This is an insane cast.
You have Bill Hader as well.
What?
Bill Hader?
Wait, Bill Hader was in the movie?
Yeah.
Where?
Wait.
He was the voice.
Oh, really?
The
voiceover?
Uh-huh.
Oh my god.
Wow, I didn't even know that.
Oh my god, he's right. What the what?
Man, there's
crazy.
There's actually really great moments with that voiceover too, like where he's like yeah, I totally am over this, or it's like it was totally mutual, and then it's like it wasn't. Like the way those jokes are played, I got a chuckle out of me. I thought most of the jokes in this movie just really work, because a lot of them are informed like by editing, where it's like it's cutting to the joke or the editing is the joke, and that's something that Edgar Wright just does with his movies. He like has humor through obviously dialogue and editing, which I think is great. Like there's a whole sequence where like there's a lot of genre kind of like rip-offs in this. There's like the whole Seinfeld sequence where it's like he gets home and like there's no reason for it to be like that, but it is, and it just works. There's so many great moments like that, but I think my favorite like hipster blah 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 commentary moment was the vegan, which also another actor, Brandon Routh.
Yeah.
And the best part was he's like, "What'd you go to the vegan academy?" And then later Ramona tells about their like relationship, and he's like, "Yeah." Then his dad sent him to vegan academy. Like the payoffs are just great.
That's the one thing that worried me about this going back in, because I recall that there were a lot of jokes that I don't know if would land in 2020, which is a real shame because like, you know, with how people have changed. But the thing I found is I like how they're more like meta commentary on just how everything is kind of stupid.
Yeah.
And the vegan police is just absolutely one of the best things in the whole film, just because it's so irreverent and strange. But you know, you just kind of deal with it. I don't think I could take it as seriously if the movie didn't have that kind of weird irreverent tone through the whole thing. You know, because like even from the start, you get the vibe that you're like, this isn't quite what you think it is it? If you get what I mean by that, like tonally. Regardless, I think a lot of the casting on the evil ex-boyfriends is a big part of the movie. I think a lot of those wouldn't be as effective if those actors weren't as like just so. The only one I was like kind of like I didn't get a lot out of was Matthew Patel, the very first one, because I just feel like not necessarily for who was his who played him. Satya by oh god, I'm gonna butcher that name. It's the only ex-boyfriend besides maybe the twins that I felt like I got very little out of. Bahaba. I don't want to.
Bahaba.
Oh god, that sounds like something entirely different.
Oh no.
I definitely felt that those might have been the only times in the movie where like they gave us a conflict and I didn't really get a whole lot out of it besides, oh yeah, we're one step closer towards finishing off these guys, which is a real shame considering the first one is supposed to be that big twist that you're like, oh, there's more going on here. If that makes sense, why I was a little like let down by the first one. And then again, the twins just kind of happen.
Oh yeah, at the end.
Yeah, they just kind of happen. They don't even get a word of dialogue.
Well,
So-
I think Matthew Patel is pretty funny because he's like, I mean,
Yeah.
he's Bollywood and it's super over the top, and it's kind of like when everything like because up to that point, the movie hasn't been that crazy, and then that happens,
true.
and then everybody, including the people in the movie, are like, "What the?"
Yeah.
That's entirely fair. I think it might just come down to the fact that I feel like it should have been a bit more explosive, but I think it's just me being picky rather than me actually saying this is horrible and they should have fixed it. Because
Stop
it's
being
not.
so picky.
Interesting enough, though, this is a great opportunity, though, because you brought up Bollywood. Every single like protagonist or every single antagonist is like some kind of like almost musical like connection. Almost, I say that, but like
Oh, well,
music is
yeah.
a big part of the movie. The only one that I think of that isn't super connected to music is Roxy,
Yeah,
the one girl, which is a bit of a shame because like you could have. I mean, her name is very
yeah, because oh my
very-
gosh, I didn't even think about that. So clever.
but yeah, everyone has some kind of music and like musical attachment to the
Mhm.
situation, and we get a lot of music in this movie. I would almost say that if it was played differently, you could tell me this was like a musical to a degree.
Almost.
In a weird way.
Well, the part when Matthew Patel starts singing is, I was just like, what is happening? There's
Even down to kind of mimicking the sounds of Bollywood. You're like,
I think Chris Evans is probably my favorite, like, just because he does Chris Evans is like the master at playing the douchebag, like the just the asshole, you know? Like, he's just the biggest jerk in the world, and he's so good at playing that character. Like, he's done it in a lot of movies, which is funny because now he's mostly associated with playing Captain America, who's like the righteous, humble guy. But like, I don't know if you've seen Knives Out, but he's in that, and he plays one of those characters.
Knives
again.
Out was
And he's
awesome.
so great. And in this, I love when he does the grind on the railing, and because like Michael Cera thought there's no way he could do it, and he's like doing it, and they're just like, what? And he's like going 250 miles an hour.
I love the editing on that, by the way, because
yeah.
like, God, it makes it feel like he's going so fast, and you're just like, God, it really says something when the editing is a big part of why a lot of these scenes are so awesome to watch.
Well,
Like,
genuinely speaking, the action in this movie is better than like the majority of action movies. Like, it's the choreographed and the fight scenes are so
Yeah.
well done. And it's
Oh,
funny
yeah.
because I was thinking of like watching this because it's like sort of has that anime kind of flair, with a lot of the
Yeah.
fights. And I was like,
yeah.
you know what Edgar Wright would have been good at adapting? I honestly think he could have pulled off a live action Avatar: The Last Airbender, because he can capture that animated energy that like it's so hard to capture that when you go from cartoon to live action.
I think that's a super, super accurate thing because like whenever you see the speed lines and like when the characters are jumping at each other and like there's that particular scene where Scott is about to finish off Matthew and you get that really cool shot of his fist moving next to his face. If you know which one, it's just really cool with the speed lines and the kind of like particles that are going by. It's really, really stunning to look at for some reason. And I don't go into this is hokey kind of like look. I was like, this is great.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
it. It's so over
It
the
gives
top.
it gives it a nice touch to it,
Yeah, it's definitely
an aesthetic.
yeah. Also, the fact that whenever he actually beats someone, they explode into coins.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's really cool to look at, especially in that last like longer fight sequence where you get to see him fight just a bunch of Gideon's goons, and they just are all like body shapes on the ground in coins. I'm like, that's great.
Yeah.
It's so pretty to look. I never realized someone bursting into coins is really cool to look at.
It kind of reminds me of like the old Lego Star Wars saga when when you defeated the Lego people and your coins would be just splattered all over the all over the level.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. That stuff is always really satisfying to look at.
I mean, not to mention the movie is just beautifully shot, like regardless of the effects and stuff. Like there's the specific shot that comes to mind is in the snow on the swing set with Ramona. Like that is a beautiful shot. And like it has that weird angle. It actually really reminds me of one of my favorite shots of all time, which is from Fargo. But there's this element of just visual, like Edgar Wright knows what he's doing with a camera, and he knows how to perfectly accentuate like each scene, like matching the dialogue with the editing and matching the dialogue with the way it's shot. Like sometimes you'll have the shots be straight on. There's the whole phone call with Natalie, and it's done in like a very noir fashion. You know, you can only see like she's in shadow. You can see like her lips, and it's like, but it's really dynamic though because the camera moves, and so she is like on one side of him and then moves onto the other side of him instead of just being like a split screen. Like it's done in such a well like thought out dynamic way. And I was thinking about a lot of the way these shots and setups work, and I'm like, the amount of planning you have to do to make that stuff work, the amount of pre-production, the amount of writing to be like, okay, so then we're going to transition. The transitions, by the way, are amazing. That's something else I made a note about. There's the part where I think there's a few times where somebody turns around and it transitions. Like there's a part where Scott like twists and then it transitions to Steve like turning around and looking at a sign, and it was like there's so much fluidity in the transitions. It's something that's just really good, like just on a base filmmaking level.
I'm curious how long this was filming for, because it feels like this would have taken a while to nail some of those like transitions and like, just getting like some of the consistency down, because there's a lot of moments where there's like this would be really hard to get in just a few takes, I imagine, mostly with like choreography and stuff like that, because like some of the things that happened in this movie are very I imagine it'd be really hard to make it like I would not be surprised if this took quite a while to blah, 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 blah. There you go. That's what I'm saying. All right, here's some trivia for you. Technically, they said that they were actually considering an official adaptation, like a film adaptation, after the first novel was released, which was back in 2004. So they were at least in talks or considering it 6 years before the movie came out. So that's interesting.
Apparently, the writer O'Malley was heavily involved with the script, and apparently some of the stuff they used in the movie were used in later Scott Pilgrim comics.
That's great.
Ooh.
I can see that, because some of the lines that they use in particular are just absolutely phenomenal. I mean, then again, it almost goes too tongue-in-cheek to the point of being like, that is maybe the one thing I'll say is that like sometimes dialogue could have crossed over into that bad territory of just being completely bad. Like, all right, real talk. I find some of the lines with Roxy a bit like, ugh.
Yeah.
Those are a few of the ones I was like, that's not that great.
Well, there's a certain kind of like part in the story where I feel like it kind of slows down, and I think that's right around when Roxy comes in, and I'm like, okay, the pacing slows down a little bit, and there's not a whole lot happening. And then it's like, the thing about a lot of the other boyfriends is it's fun because like they're super weird, and like the way they're introduced is really like dramatic and unexpected. But the problem is Roxy kind of gets like this intro, then it's like, okay, then she's gonna come later.
I do find it weird that she shows up so early out of nowhere.
And I think it's her and the twins really that have like as villain or as exes. They just don't add a whole lot. The fight with her is pretty fun, like with like that chain thing, like visually speaking. And I thought it was kind of clever how it's like he's like, "Oh, I'm not gonna hit a girl" or whatever, and then so Ramona just uses his arms. I found that kind of funny. Or Ramona pulls out this like huge hammer. And I'm like, what in the world? Where did that come from?
I love the hammer. I don't know what you're talking about.
Interesting thing about the stunts, they use the Jackie Chan stunt team, which explains a lot.
That makes sense, yeah. I am curious. So, all right, real talk. Since we have a lot of fight sequences, or at least we have a lot of like particular antagonistic figures. I'm curious who everyone's favorite is, because I think that like plays up to kind of like what kind of theming you liked most throughout the film, because there's a lot of different like thematic kind of like things going on per character. Like, you know, remember we have a guy who's Bollywood themed, we have a character who is movie themed. We have someone who is very much rock band / vegan themed, I guess, if you really want to go there.
Telepath.
Yeah, telepath. By the way, they just casually say that apparently in this universe you get telepathic powers at a because the way Steven says it, he's just like, oh yeah, so why exactly does it do that? Which implies that it sounds like a normal thing that people have heard before.
When you go to Vegan Academy, of course.
Jeez. Yeah, I'm curious which one was like everybody's favorite, because I feel like that's an interesting like little tidbit about the movie in general.
Wait, so you're asking who our favorite villain is?
Yeah, essentially, because
it's hard to pick. I think between, for me, the two like standouts. I did say Chris Evans, but I was thinking about it more. It's probably Jason Schwartzman. The reason is because he's not really like overtly an asshole. Like he's actually like, he offers them a job and he's really nice. And he's like, no hard feelings, buddy. And he has that kind of like face that you just want to punch. Just like he does such a good job of being the fake nice person that like that you just want to kill. And he's so easy to dislike that he's a lot of fun. I also like that he's chewing gum. It's just a random character element that just makes him even less likable.
They made him swallow it. How could they?
Yeah. No, it's probably him.
I can definitely agree. I definitely feel like he has the most like antagonistic but like not bad guy nature of the entire cast. He's just not like overtly a jerk, besides just being like, the closest you can be to not being a pure jerk, I guess, if that makes sense. I also like his thematic. I believe he's got some like kind of weird techno inspired stuff going on, just like the Twins does, which I really kind of appreciate. But he also kind of represents the complete antithesis, I think, to Scott in a way. He's a successful guy who has a lot of power, who is able to get what he wants. He kind of represents everything that Scott isn't, to a degree.
Yeah, but he's still like a weird, quirky, like, but not somebody you would consider macho,
Yeah, I think his intelligence is also like a big like differential thing, because you can tell he's a very smart dude to get where he's at. Yeah. And they played up a little bit with the fact that he put a chip basically in Ramona's neck.
He's like, he gets in my head. He's like, no, literally, he's in my head.
Yeah, they play up how smart he is. I forget if it was the comics that did it or if it was the short beat 'em up game they made, but at one point he basically pulls a Mega Man 2 and just has a hologram machine that makes a hologram Gideon that fights for him. And I was like, I love it. He's just a maniacal villain hiding behind a bunch of like technology. It's wonderful. They don't play with that at all in this movie, really, but I can see it. And there's like little bits and pieces in his character that show just how much of a like intellectual threat he is. But at the end of the day, good wins. Not love though. Self-respect.
Mm-hmm.
What about you, Will? Who's your favorite?
So many. Lucas.
Ooh, okay. I mean, I think that's a really good choice.
Lucas, because Chris Evans.
He's really good at it. Like,
yeah, seriously.
I really like him as like an antagonistic figure. It's great.
It's awesome. I mean, you don't really see him as an antagonist in some movies. So he's always the hero sometimes. Well,
yeah, you rarely see him as a bad guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Even though that's kind of where he started. Like, this movie came out a long time ago.
2010.
Ever since Captain America and like Snowpiercer and other movies, Chris Evans usually plays as the hero, the good guy.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's weird because this almost works as like a commentary on Chris Evans as a hero, even though he wasn't really that then. Like, it's weird how it kind of like, it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy, because like the actor plays as the good guy in his movies. Like, Lucas plays as like the heroes in his movies. But he's like an asshole. But Chris Evans would go on to play as like heroes in all these movies, and like, it's really funny how that kind of works, like in hindsight.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Also, just the way he talks kind of like gives you that like skater bro vibe of like a dude
Yeah.
who's just unfeeling and uncaring. Also, the way he talks to his son. the visual gag of the stunt double is absolutely fantastic, and I can't believe we just glossed over it.
Oh yeah.
You know, because we get one stunt double, and then we realize he has like 7, and he's good bros with all of them. Oh, it's great.
There's so many good uses of like visual effects, like just like simple ones too, like texts or flashing lights or like the anime kind of like effects in this movie. I was thinking about like making a note of all of them, then I realized I'd feel like a notebook.
You know what one like really got me, and I didn't even think about it till it happened, was the one punch when Matthew punches Scott, and you see like glass break. The glass actually physically falls in the next shot onto the ground, and I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
It really got me. I was like, that's okay. Why is that there? What?
I mean, there's even like simple things. Like there's the shot with when he first meets Ramona and she's like leaning against the wall, and I can't remember what the text said, but he like slides in over where the text is, and it was like something like "This is her" or something. It's a very, very simple effect. It's not maybe the right word, but it's a very simple usage of text and shot composition, and it's like a perfect introductory shot, and it just works really well.
I was gonna also ask how you guys felt about the use of actual like animated comic panels that were from the thing itself.
Oh, for the backstories?
Yeah,
that's awesome.
I felt it was really well used. Yeah.
Yes.
It never felt lazy or overdone.
Well, it was perfect too because they were using it to tell the backstory. Like it's not like they were using it to tell the whole movie or anything, which was I thought great. Like it fit in perfectly.
I was gonna say it's a bit of a shame that we only got it for like a couple people though.
Yeah.
I was kind of like I found it weird that they did it for like the first half and then they don't do it again after. The last person they do it with is the third, and you don't get one for Roxy, for the twins, or for Gideon. They stopped doing it at that point, which I found was a little odd, but that's fine. I guess like maybe that was an emphasis on the idea that we don't need like background. Actually, okay, never mind. This puts me in a totally different perspective when I think about it. Maybe that's like another way of them saying, hey, you don't need this backstory anymore. You get it. You don't need to know that these guys in particular did certain things. The whole idea is that you're supposed to get past what people have done, and you're supposed to like just fix the relationship. Don't worry about the what's and the ifs.
Yeah.
And the whys.
Oh, sorry, continue.
Yeah. Oh no, that's about it. But I didn't even think about that. Maybe that's why they stopped showing us the backstory panels, is because hey, the characters are changing. They don't care as much about the why.
Yeah.
Right.
The gag, there's Aubrey Plaza, she has like a cussing gag. But it's
yeah.
That was like one of my favorite gags. He's like, "How are you doing?"
That was so clever.
And then Natalie does it later to Aubrey Plaza. But I thought that was pretty funny. I also I think they do a good job of like showing most of the characters' humanity, like besides maybe Gideon, but it's like even with Natalie, who like the whole time is built up to be like the worst person in the world, and when you first meet her she's kind of like super posing and stuff, but then he calls her Natalie and she's like, nobody doesn't call me that anymore, and you can tell she kind of feels bad. Like I like little things like that where it's like you kind of can peek through a character's like over dramatic appearances, and then you can see that they actually have some humanity behind them.
So is that hey, they have a good side,
Yeah,
I think most of the time.
They're well-rounded individuals for the most part.
Yeah.
Playing back up into that theming that everyone has I mean, I don't know. I feel like that's a big part of the movie is just forgiveness.
Yeah.
Considering the fact that Knives had to eventually forgive Scott. Fuck. Sorry, I don't know why that slipped out. I'm bad. Also, I just want to note that I'm really glad they did eventually include the actual appearances of every character by the end, because Knives didn't actually resemble herself to the very last scene in the movie. The last like sequence. Yeah. That's her like main design, is with the scarf. And I find it really interesting that they didn't do it till the very end, which shows character growth. I really like the framing on certain shots. We've talked about it a couple times already, but the particular one where he's talking with Ramona and discussing Envy a bit, like when he's like alluding to how much he got hurt by her. I like how the narrator just kind of like boops in with the complete opposite of what he's talking about, but the way they frame it is you only get like him shrouded in like darkness essentially.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean, with like the
Yeah.
light shining in behind him, and it really showcases that like where his mind is at
Mhm.
when he thinks about that whole situation. And I really, despite being like a partially comedic moment, you also get that this has really hurt him. It's had a huge impact on him. And I also like that then they go to another shot where they move him over, and then you've got the same thing, but you can see Ramona just slightly above his arm, showing that she's in the back still listening. And like also you can give that another like kind of juxtaposition that like he's still thinking and he's still stuck, but she's back there already kind of like trying to find her way out of everything she went through.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Considering she's quote unquote more adjusted than he is to all those stuff that's happened to her. You can say that. I mean, at the end of the movie, we really have to consider the fact that she's slowly fixing herself too. But I don't know. I guess thinking about it, like it's weird to like if that was symbolism, it kind of doesn't work as much considering she herself has a lot of problems still.
Yeah.
But I don't know on that one.
Well, there's a lot of other stuff too, like just like nice little tidbits in the frame, like when he's gonna break up with Knives and they're like on the, I want to say Dance Dance Revolution, but it's really not. It's like a ninja Dance Dance Revolution, and then it's like in the
Yeah.
background, it's like continue, and then it's like the clock's going down, like if they're going to continue their relationship. And he's like, "Do you think we should do this anymore?" Like the way it's framed as if it's like, oh, the game's going to continue, but also the relationship. I thought that was really clever and a lot of fun.
There's a lot of like video gamey kind of references to a lot of
yeah.
things.
Oh, yeah,
Obvious-
that just reminded me of like one of my favorite little bits, because like he goes to the bathroom, Scott does, and then like I think this is the first time he sees Ramona or whatever in like that dream, but they're playing the music from Zelda when you go into like a puddle or whatever to heal in Zelda.
Oh yeah.
And it's like dun, 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 dun. And it's like very subtle in the background, and I didn't recognize it first, and I thought about it, and it's like representing like kind of his like character building back up, and it was like after he was relieving himself, and I don't know, it was a really funny video game touch.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I love the whole video game aspect of this whole movie. I mean, it gives you a almost a Mortal Kombat mixed with like a retro arcade game feel, which I loved about it. With like the little aspects of like the plus 500 when he when he defeats some like an enemy or something like that. It's those little things that give me like, oh, this is such an awesome video game
Which
type
probably
movie.
that ties right back into the coins thing because everything pops into coins, which actually, when you think about it, the arcade is a central place that we get to see him have fun.
Yep.
We see again like arcade games and that kind of like vibe. I think Mortal Kombat is a good comparison. They also could have gone with a Street Fighter comparison too.
Yeah, seriously. I mean,
but I don't know which it was because they're kind of like they do like a finish him kind of thing at one point. I believe who was it that said it? Was it Wallace? Because he's like, all right, I take it back. Go finish him or something.
Finish him.
I think so. Maybe.
Something. I'd have to go back to that scene. But
there's a lot. It's a hard thing with this movie with like watching it is you kind of have to watch it a few times to catch. Like there's so much in it. Like it's jam packed with like gags and like little fun little Easter eggs and character moments that like you can't really catch all the time just from one sitting because there's just so much going on. And I don't think it's overwhelming per se. I just think like it rewards multiple viewings.
Absolutely. I think you're right on that one because there's a lot of like there's also like a lot of visual gags that like you the viewer won't immediately notice, and a lot of like audio gags too. Like there's definitely some I missed, but like whenever a fight ends, you always hear people say something afterward.
Yeah.
And like I haven't caught all of them. I remember one of them was after Roxy. Some guy's like, "Man, when I would just be embarrassed." And stuff like that, and I'm just like, I really like how loud those voices are. You can like pick them out and be like, I wonder what people around them are thinking about the situation. There's a lot of like good stuff like that that I think plays into it. Also, I know I mentioned the music, but the music is just really good. It's really, really good. I find it funny though that they say that their band, Sex
Babam.
Is it Sex Babam?
Yeah.
I always thought it was Sexy Babam, but yeah, Sex Babam.
My favorite is when I can't remember who says it. I think it was maybe Gideon or someone else, but they call it Sex Bob
sex Bob-on or something like like
It's
he
that's
says
great.
it purposely wrong because he doesn't care. The music, it's funny for a band that's so bad. Like they're actually not bad, but like that's the joke.
The joke is like they think they're terrible, but it's like they're not that bad.
They just need to be passionate.
I love it
That's
how
how
they
it
make
goes.
fun of that hipster, like, yeah, you know, now the song's about death or whatever. Like,
I like the one is like, haha, it's not a race, guys. And go, all right, the next song is for you. It's called "We Hate You."
yeah, he's like,
I
oh, my
love that
favorite.
joke.
Oh man, yeah,
Wallace is just so good.
yeah.
I
This
think
is
that his relationship with like every other character is like completely humorous, and I like that there's emphasis on like people have been around him so much that they know how he is. Because
yeah,
Scott's sister at one point is like, "Not again, Wallace," and it's regarding the fact that Wallace just stole her boyfriend.
Yep.
Which it's a really funny joke. Wallace is probably played up the best throughout the whole film, just
yeah.
because
Like he's like the best in terms of comedic relief, recurring comedic relief from one character.
he's also like pretty important when you think about it, considering the fact that he put down that ultimatum that Scott breaks up with Knives before like that certain point in the movie. Otherwise, like
I
Scott
like it.
probably wouldn't have.
I like it how he's Scott's conscience, and he's also like he's not a good guy either. Scott, they even kind of make fun of that because Scott's like, this is a double standard because like he like has her boyfriend or whatever, and like more people, and he's like, hey, I didn't write the rule book, but I find it kind of funny because it's like Scott's conscience, because Scott's not really that great of a guy either, but he's also like, it makes them all feel more human, I should say.
Yeah. I was gonna say, I just think that the main cast on that side of the spectrum are very people. Like, you know what I mean? Like a lot. I also think that a lot of them are like Scott's quote unquote support group when you think about it from like an emotional standpoint. Everyone has something for him.
Yeah.
That is important. Scott has that kind of conscience. His sister has the maybe you should like, you know, not like she's that kind of rational voice at the end of the day that's not completely mean.
Yeah.
Even though she just kind of comes off more as a typical I like how do I phrase this? Someone who likes to get their nose into like people's business.
Like
Yeah,
or
she's
whatever.
nosy.
Yeah, both of those are absolutely correct. You've got Steven, who is the kind of like passionate music side. You got Kim, who is Kim.
I think Kim is a good character because she kind of like she represents the first person that Scott kind of like didn't treat right. At the end of the movie, he like apologizes to her for everything, and I think that's a very nice moment because she like, and that's the first time she smiles in the whole movie. There's a lot of stuff like that where he needed to repair all these broken relationships, and he needed to kind of step up and repair them because even though like people were still like, it's not like they cut them out of their lives or anything, but he wasn't growing and he wasn't helping anybody. He was just hurting people. I think we're good now to kind of get into how final thoughts and recommendations. Sky, do you want to go first since you recommended it?
Yeah. So I opened with saying that I haven't seen this film in a while, and I wasn't sure how I would feel about it because it's, you know, my taste on movies has matured a lot. The thing I realized, I actually like it even more now because I can appreciate how much work and effort went in to make this as good as it is. And it's like I had so much fun watching it. I was like smiling ear to ear the whole film. I will say part of me is probably biased because like I can actually catch a lot of those like references as well. Like every time, even with little stuff like the the Final Fantasy 2, like, oh, I learned the bass line. I'm like, that's funny. You're making a joke. Haha. All this little stuff that like is in there makes me love the movie, and I love almost everything about it. This is probably my favorite Edgar Wright movie. That's it. As of now, it's probably my favorite Edgar Wright movie. After rewatching it, I've really come to the conclusion. Young me liked it. Older me loves it.
Yeah.
So I recommend it. Yeah.
Well, your thoughts?
So this is actually the second time I've seen this movie. I remember the first time I saw this movie was like a year after it got released, and I gotta say, the first time I saw it, I mean, I completely forgot about this movie until it was brought up again. I was like, whoa. Then I saw it again. I was like, whoa. And it's a very fun movie. very action packed, I would say. Very attention grabbing, I would say. Very attention grabbing, keeps you on your toes, and it doesn't really have any. I wouldn't say it has anything boring about it. Yeah, it has its ups and downs. Yeah, it's. I mean, it's Edgar Wright. I mean, what are you gonna do? It's an awesome movie, and the style says, and the style talks for its stuff. Talks for itself. I would definitely recommend it to a whole bunch of people who love, video game esque type of movies, or just fun movies, colorful movies, action movies, just something like that.
Yeah, I think that this movie is one of the best examples of a well done action comedy. And I think the biggest reason why is because all we've been talking about is that the characters and their arcs and how well fleshed out they are. And I think a big issue with a lot of action comedies is they focus too much on the action or the comedy and they forget the character aspect. And the great action
Yeah,
comedies, I think of stuff like Guardians of the Galaxy or this or other Edgar Wright movies, is that they manage to flesh out and give heart to these characters while also like indulging in this crazy wacky world in a very entertaining and fulfilling way. And I think
yeah,
that Scott Pilgrim versus the World is one of, I don't know that it's Edgar Wright's best film, but it's definitely one of his most entertaining, and it might be his like most stylish film.
it's
And
definitely his most stylish.
yeah, and I think it's great for all those reasons. It's really a shame that it bombed at the box office like miserably, but it's a fantastic film, super underrated, and has an amazing cast, and it's super well put together. And it's one of the few adaptations that manages. I mean, I haven't read the source material, but it stands on its own 2 feet. So many adaptations fail, and this stands on its own 2 feet, and that's something to be proud of. And really, just whenever I watch an Edgar Wright movie, I'm like, gosh, I want more Edgar Wright. And he doesn't have a whole lot of movies, which is also something, to there's a certain degree of like prestige to that. But it makes every new Edgar Wright film come off as like this is an event. But I love it. I would recommend it to anybody who likes entertaining movies
Yeah,
that also have a lot of value to them. Yeah, I highly, highly recommend it.
Basil,
Yes.
you said that it bombed at the box office,
Yeah.
and even it did make $4.1 million in the box office. But the thing is, it got a 7.5 out of 10 on IMDb and 82% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah, well, those things aren't always right. Sometimes things
They
are
aren't always
some things
well.
are ahead of their time.
Well, that's just you.
That's what?
I don't know. I'm tired. I'm tired today.
82 isn't bad on
Notably,
Rotten Tomatoes. That's actually
hey,
I've seen movies gross a lot more, but no, the movie cost like 60 million to make, and it did not make that money back.
yeah, which is a real shame.
85.
Well,
Oh
and that's the thing, though. In order to be considered a success, you need to actually double your budget.
yeah.
So, unfortunately, that is considered
Oh
a failure
wow.
for them.
85. Wow, you're right, Will.
Yeah,
85 million to make. 48
yeah,
million is how much it made. Wow, that it didn't
Yeah,
even
so
make half, or it made
that
a
is
little over half.
like painful.
Dang,
So, like, dude,
that's a shame.
that's such a shame. It does have a cult following. I mean, critics like it. So,
Yeah,
at the end of the day, I think it's another situation. We've talked about a bunch of movies on here that they didn't get their due. Like
yeah.
The Thing didn't get its due when it came out. This didn't get its due. I think that's just the unfortunate side effect. Like another one that I'm sure at some point we'll watch Blade Runner 20,
Yeah, I'm sure
2020,
if
whatever.
one of you guys don't recommend that, I will at some point.
Yeah, so I think it just goes to show that, like, unfortunately, normal moviegoers don't represent, like, they don't always represent what is a truly good movie by
Mhm.
putting their dollars in. Then again, I also don't know what this movie went up against, so that's an important thing. I
Yeah.
did want to know, there is an important thing that everyone needs to know. They actually announced back in May that Scott Pilgrim versus the World, the movie, is also going to be coming back to theaters.
Oh, really? Well, if
Yeah, they
theaters still
announced it with
exist.
Well, the plan was, as some people say, it might come back in August, but Edgar Wright said that he is in talks to do something to bring it back, to put it in theaters again, so that people can watch it, to kind of go along with his whole thing that his new movie is on the way.
Yeah.
So that's something cool that I'm kind of like, I'll probably go see it in the theater to support it, because it definitely deserved its due.
Yeah, I think that about wraps it up for this episode of the Commuters. Tune in next time to hear Will say.
What?
As a VeggieTales reference, I was hoping you would say somebody stole my hairbrush or something. Anyways, we will be back in a couple of weeks with something new and fresh, like a diced tomato. See ya.
Bye.
Bye.